Unity of Houston is an inclusive church where we seek to understand and live the teachings of Jesus and other spiritual masters. At Unity, we welcome all people from all spiritual paths and every walk of life. We celebrate the diversity of our city and of our world, and we teach love, tolerance, and oneness, seeking to live in harmony with open minds and open hearts.
Wherever you are in your spiritual path, you are always welcome at Unity. Join us and discover that the life of your dreams is already within you. Heal. We're launching a 4-part series today on healing and wholeness. If you're new to Unity, you may not know that our teaching, our community, our organization, everything about Unity was really founded on healing. Our co-founders, Myrtle and Charles Fillmore, both experienced physical healing as a result of spiritual teaching. And early on in the life of Unity, there was a great focus on physical healing through spiritual means, through metaphysical healing. Today, my topic is all healing is spiritual healing. There was a time in the path of our movement, the evolution of it, that we realized that we want to expand beyond just the physical, that we want to be healed in all areas of our life. Amen? You know, in our relationships, in our finances, in our emotional life. So that's what I hope to do today, but first a joke. A man gets a job interview in Texas he's never been before, and he arrives, and there's a limo driver waiting for him in a huge stretch limo, and he comes to the driver, and he's like, wow, I've never seen a car this big, and the driver says, everything's bigger in Texas. Got him to the hotel, and it was this huge building. He walked into this huge lobby. He goes up to the check-in desk. He said, I've never seen a hotel like this. And the man behind the desk said, well, you know, everything's bigger in Texas. Gets his bags up to the room. There's this king-size bed like he's never seen. He turns to the bellman. He said, I've never. And the bellman says, everything's bigger in Texas. You know where I'm going. That night, he goes down to the bar, and he orders a beer, and this gigantic mug of beer is put in front of him, and the bartender said the same thing. Everything's bigger in Texas. Well, he had more than he should have had, and so at one point he said to the bartender, I need to go use the restroom, and the bartender said, well, it's down that long hallway, third door on the right. And he may have been a little confused or inebriated, but he went through the second door, and he took a step and right into the swimming pool. He raised his hands flaming and said, don't flush, don't flush. Oh, it takes a second, doesn't it? Everything's bigger in Texas. Feels good to laugh, doesn't it? In Proverbs, it actually says that laughter doeth good like a medicine. Science has now proven it, that happier people who laugh often, have better health. Did you know that physical touch is also good for your health? People who get more hugs tend to have better health. Did you know that spending time in nature is good for your health? The people who spend time among living things, out in the tree people and the bird people and the water, they have a better health. And why do you think these things are? What's the commonality here? Each of these things I just mentioned realigns us with who we are. Laughter reminds us that we are beings of joy. We forget. Oh boy, do we forget. But a laugh will kind of restart us back into who we truly are in spirit, which is we are the joy of God expressing. Those hugs, they remind us that we are love. Not we are loved, but we are love. It's the very essence of our being. And when we have a practice, an experience that realigns us with our truth, we experience more of who we are. We heal. And when we step out into nature, we are reminded that we are part of something larger than ourselves. We are realigned. In Unity, it's interesting because we use this word healing a lot, but it's not quite accurate. Ernest Holmes said it this way, there is actually nothing to heal, only truth to be revealed. We begin with the premise, the idea that we are expressions of God, and so the very perfect being and nature and function of God is our birthright. That's who we are. Right thinking, right living, right function in our body, freedom in all ways. That is the truth of our being. And we've forgotten. And so what we experience as healing in time and space is actually just a remembering. Just a revealing of the truth of our nature. We are here to reveal the truth of who we are. The word healing comes, of course, from the word wholeness, wholenass, but it also has the same root as the word holiness. Holistic. We are one presence, one power, individualized in unique expressions, but we are one. And that spiritual cause is why I say that all healing is spiritual. Because all healing is to realign us with the truth of the indwelling presence of infinite love and infinite power and infinite life. That's who we are. And when we remember and when we reconnect, our lives exhibit this wholeness, this holiness, and we have what we would call healing. I don't know if any of you have ever experienced a dramatic healing. I've had a few of them, more in the emotional realm, like a belief. I've shared the story of the doll that my babysitter gave me when I was 3, and my dad took it away. It caused this family drama. I don't want to tell the whole story again, but a false belief got formed in me that if I show up as who I truly am, people are harmed. And that belief guided my actions and my beliefs and my perceptions and my choices for 40 years until I had a healing. And I recognized that that idea that I've been carrying around was never true. And I released it and was free to show up as who I am with all my quirks. I haven't brought any baby dolls to church so far, but I get to show up as who I am. That is a healing. So healing is here for all of us. We are all here meant to experience more and more of the truth of who we are. Here's what Eric Butterworth said about it. There is that of you that is greater than your weakness, stronger than your fears, the four-dimensional creature that is whole even within your sickness. There is that of you that is the perfect idea in the mind of God. You are simply asleep to the greater self, your innate divinity. Paul says, "Awake thou that sleepest in Christ, that Christ may shine upon thee," in Ephesians 5:14. And what is Christ but your own divinity, the particularization, the individualization of the infinite source of life into the pattern of the finite embodiment? It is a perfect pattern. It is whole, and it is you at the point of God. Ernest Holmes also says, the realization of the presence of God is the most powerful healing agency known to man. All healing is spiritual healing. When we realize the truth of who we are, it will demonstrate in our lives, and we are set free. This is the power of a spiritual healing. This is the power of living our lives on a spiritual basis. And those realizations can come in different forms. When our mother Myrtle she had tuberculosis, and was, as many people did back in the 1800s, and she was really struggling. And she attended a service by E.B. Weeks. Do I have my history right? And a thought occurred to her. At least it was a truth that showed up through a thought. And it was this: I'm a child of God, therefore I do not inherit sickness. And that realization of a divine truth began a process of restoring her body. And it didn't happen instantly. It took over months, and she would speak to those very healing centers of her body. She asked forgiveness for thinking of them wrongly, but she knew that she was a child of God, and she did not inherit sickness. That was a false idea that she was willing to lay aside and let the truth of her body be revealed, and she was healed. So it is this really coming to oneself, awakening to ourselves. And all the spiritual traditions speak of this, that we have somehow fallen asleep, we have somehow been blinded by the illusions of this world, and that through awakening we become enlightened, we become reconnected, and we are healed. That's what it's about. So how do we do it, right? I mean, it sounds great. How do we do it? There's a process. This is the mechanics of metaphysics, and it's called cause and effect. You've heard of it, right? Cause and effect. And the question I would ask us today is, are we living at the level of cause or at the level of effect? Do you remember that old song, "Nobody likes me, everybody hates me, guess I'll go eat worms"? Do you remember that? Maybe it's just Oklahoma. We're kind of a little up there. "Nobody likes me, everybody hates me, guess I'll go eat worms." I don't know why that occurred to me this morning when I was in the shower, but it did, because I knew I was talking about cause and effect. And I thought, maybe nobody likes you because of your worm-eating ways. Then maybe if you stopped eating the worms and showed up a little differently, maybe people would get a chance to like you. But we do that. Not the worm bit, but you know what I mean. Living at the level of condition is like we wait to see what's happening in our lives before we decide if we're going to have a good day. How's the weather? What's my bank account? How's the body feeling? Do people like me? And if everything is to our liking, then I'll have a good day. That's living at the level of condition. And when conditions are good, hey, no problem. But you see, we get thrown and turned by life that way. But living at the level of cause, and I would say that consciousness is cause. What do you know to be true? What are you aware of? Consciousness is cause. And when we live at the level of, no matter what the conditions in my life look like today, I am blessed and highly favored. Amen? Thank you. I knew I was in a Unity Church there. That the conditions do not rule our lives. Our awareness of the truth of God, the presence of God, the power of God, the possibility of God in me, that's what rules my life. And so I have the power within me. You have the power within you to overcome all conditions, to live a life of oneness and in that indwelling power so that we can overcome, we can rise above the level of conditions, and the conditions will change because they are an effect of what? Our consciousness. That's the way the metaphysics work. You begin here, heart and mind. There's another Holmes quote. Some of you know I was trained in science of mind for many years, so I love the Fillmores and I love Emily Cady, but I tend to go back to Ernest Holmes sometimes because I'm a little bit more deeply steeped in that teaching. And this is what he says in The Science of Mind. Man, by thinking, can bring into his experience whatsoever he desires. We could just stop right there, couldn't we? I'm going to read it again. Man and women can, by thinking, can bring into his experience whatsoever he desires, if he thinks correctly and becomes a living embodiment of his thoughts. Oh, there was an if. Sorry about that. By thinking, we can create whatever we desire if we think correctly. And the thoughts become a living embodiment of the thoughts. This is the part that's kind of interesting. He says, this is not done by holding thoughts, but by knowing the truth. Some people ask why my affirmations aren't working. Because I'm holding the thought, but I haven't embodied the truth. I haven't come to truly know the truth. You know, the scripture says, Jesus says, you shall know the truth and the truth shall set you free. You can't know about the truth. You can't just repeat the words of the truth. A knowing that is deep within you is what sets you free. And so I've been reflecting on this message all week long and thinking about some of the ways in which I have experienced healing in my life, and thinking about the journey from the not knowing the truth to the knowing the truth. And I was thinking, gosh, it's hard. It's a struggle. And I was just remembering how deeply conditioned my mind was around some of these things. Like, man, this is really difficult. And I was feeling kind of burdened by it. It's like, this metaphysics is tough. But then I remembered what our way shower, elder brother, master teacher Jesus said in Matthew 11. He says, "Come to me, all who are weary and heavy laden, and I will give you rest. For my yoke is easy and my burden is light." It's like, wait a minute, Jesus. It feels hard, and you're telling me that it's easy. So I've meditated on that for a couple of days, and here's what I've come to. When Jesus says, "Come to me," he's talking about come to the Christ mind within yourself. Come to that truth, that awakening I've been talking about. Come to it. Being in the truth is easy. Being in the truth, you are free from burdens, you are free. It's the coming that's the hard part. It's actually made its way into our vernacular and slang when people say, we need to have a come to Jesus about this one. You know what that means? We need to have a difficult conversation and tell some truth. All of us need a little come to Jesus around our misapprehensions, our false ideas and mistaken beliefs about our identity. We all need to come to the Christ awareness, come to Jesus, let it go, the old limited false idea, and come to the truth. And when we're living in the truth, the burden is light. The freedom is here. So what is that difficult piece? What is it that keeps us stuck in our truth and unable to come to the truth of the Christ mind? There's just really one word to describe it. Michael Beckwith says it this way: there are 4 kinds of pain in this world, and they are resistance, 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 and resistance. Resistance. There is something in us that resists knowing the truth and holds to the false way of being. A friend of mine from the church sent me an email this week talking about suffering. We've all heard the thing that pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. I knew that one. The second one she gave me, I didn't know. She said this: your suffering, the equation for your suffering, it is your pain multiplied by your resistance. Think about that. When we experience anything that is the painful conditions of this life, we tend to take on those conditions as our truth. If you grew up under an abusive household, you were told that you were nothing, you as a child will take that on. And you will live your life as though you are unworthy of love and freedom of being. That's just the way it is in this human experience. And we carry these false ideas and we cling to them with such ferocity. Why? Because that's what we know. That's who we think we are. And even though the idea of freedom and boundless possibility sure sounds good, it doesn't feel like us. What feels like us is the pain and the limitation and the struggle. That's what we know. A lot of us have come into this teaching from the 12-step tradition. And I've shared a lot of those stories here in the past about how small and confined and painful my life became through my alcohol addiction. And there's a saying in AA that says, if I had made a list of everything I wanted on my first day of recovery, I would have sold myself way short. And that's the truth. My self-esteem, my self-knowledge was so small and so painfully limited that I really wanted the pain to quit and maybe have a little more money and maybe the arguments to stop. This is all I thought I needed. And what was being offered to me was the kingdom of heaven. And over time, as I began this process of reflection, of discovering my false beliefs, of releasing that thought that it would limit me and step into a thought of empowerment, this was a process of healing. Over time, the miracles that have occurred in my life have been so much greater than I ever would have known. There's a story of a beggar in a kingdom. And he saw that there was a notice posted in the village square that said that there is a banquet that the king is throwing in honor of the prince, and all are welcome, but you must have royal attire. And this man, this poor man who had struggled to eke out an existence, he looked down at his ragged clothes and he said, "That's not for me." And yet, something in him thought, well, maybe there's a little possibility. And so he went to the palace and he spoke to the guard and he said, "May I speak to the king?" And the guard did not turn him away. He said, "Let me inquire." And the king agreed to see him, and so he was ushered into the throne room, and he stood before the king, and then the king said, "What is it you wish to speak to me about?" And he said, "King, your majesty, I would so love to attend the banquet tomorrow night, but you can see that these are all the clothes I have, and I could never attend." And the king said, "It's so good that you came and asked this of me." And he summoned the prince and said, "I want you to take this man into your quarters, and I want you to find him one of your finest robes and place it upon him so that he can be in your celebration banquet tomorrow night." And the prince was so pleased to do so, and he let him select from several robes and undergarments, and he saw himself in the mirror, and he was transformed. And he was so happy. And as he prepared to leave the palace, he noticed his old clothes lying there. And the prince saw this and said, "You don't need to worry about that. Not only are these clothes royal and regal and beautiful, but they will never wear out. They will last you for eternity." And the man wanted to believe, but thought, "I better hedge my bets." And so he gathered his rags in a bundle and he carried them with him. The next night he arrived at the banquet, and he didn't want to leave his old clothing at home in case someone would break in and steal it. So he had his bundle of rags with him during the banquet. And the food was amazing, but he missed some of the great courses because he didn't want to drop the rags. So he only half enjoyed this royal banquet. He was saddened at the end of it when he realized what he had done, but he took his bundle and he went home, and he lived the rest of his days guarding this bundle of rags. On his deathbed, he was visited by the king of the kingdom. And when the king was in his presence, the man confessed his sorrow that he didn't believe the gift that was given and how he had limited his experience of life. And they wept together. I don't really need to explain this story, do I? It's what we do. We have been gifted with a life of abundance and wholeness, and yet we cling to the sorrowful set of beliefs that we have been conditioned to believe are true about us. This is a come to Jesus moment. I'm inviting you to examine the wardrobe of your belief system. This week, I ask you to look at those continuous patterns of pain and struggle in your life. The places where you continue to feel at odds with the people around you, where you don't feel like you fit in, where you judge others. All of these places where we don't feel the wholeness and the freedom of God. And be willing to lay it down. And I will tell you, it is terrifying. Because it's what we know. We have learned to live life on life's rules based upon the conditioned reality, and to give it up is we are stepping into the great unknown. But it's actually not unknown, is it? It's just yet unexperienced. I don't know what God has in mind for your life. I don't know what are the areas of freedom that are awaiting you on the other side of this journey of releasing your old ideas and beliefs and perceptions. But I do know this: it ain't eating worms. It's good. There is a banquet that has been prepared for you of abundance and freedom and well-being. One thing I do want to, as we begin this month studying healing and wholeness, one of the things we're going to talk about is that our thoughts held in mind produce after their kind, and often the things that we see show up in our lives are the result of our own thinking. And I know when I was kind of new to metaphysics, I would see other people that were demonstrating lack or illness, and I would want to know, what have they done to cause that? And one of my teachers, brilliant teachers, she said, we don't do that. That's called metaphysical malpractice. There is a law of cause and effect, and it is very helpful for us to apply the law to ourselves. When we see that we have demonstrated conditions that do not feel like the freedom of God, it is really good for us to ask, what have I thought or believed that has brought this about in my life? But we never apply that law to other people. We apply the love to ourselves and only love to other people. So when we do this work in community, we support each other, but we do not judge one another for the path because you don't know what they're on, the journey that they're on. Just take a breath. I know I kind of poked you a little bit. I do it because I love you and because people did it to me. And it has shaken me up at different times and to look at my life differently. Why? So that I can drop the dirt, drop the old dirty rags, and take on these garments of who I truly am. And I'm still doing this work, so don't judge me either, okay? And I won't judge you. I'm still doing this work, discovering my false beliefs, uncovering where they came from, releasing them, so that I can step into the truth of who I am and the truth of who you are. Oh, you are amazing. Something is happening here in this church, and it's happening through you, as you. I love you. God bless you.
Thank you for watching this message today. I'd like to invite you to join us in person here on campus at Unity of Houston for Sunday morning or Wednesday evening services. If you can't be with us here on our campus, you can still join us live on Facebook or on our website, unityhouston.org, Sunday mornings at 11 a.m. Central.